The sun blazed mercilessly over the city of Thebes. Amenhotep stood at the edge of his father's farm, staring at the parched earth. He was 17 years old, and for the first time in his life he witnessed the Nile so silent. The great river, which each year brought its flood to fertilize the lands, had failed. But this year the gift of the god Hapi had not come. "Father, when will the water come?" he asked, his voice carrying a mixture of hope and dread. Old Khaemwaset placed his hand on his son's shoulder. The deep lines on his face bore the marks of 50 years spent beside the Nile. "My son," he said slowly, "the gods must be angry. Our pharaoh, the divine Amenhotep III, has ordered prayers in the great temples. The priests are making offerings to Amun-Ra and Hapi." Young Amenhotep touched the withered corn stalks. At this time last year, the fields had been full of fertile waters. Now the soil was cracked, the roots of plants hanging in the air. In their village, people spoke with worry. The elders told of the great famine years ago, that terrible time when people died of hunger. In the village square, people had gathered. Amenhotep and his father joined them. The village scribe held a papyrus scroll, his face anxious. "The pharaoh's command," he called out. Everyone fell silent. "Our great and divine pharaoh, Amenhotep III, will hold a special ceremony at the great temple of Karnak. Gold, silver, and the most precious offerings will be presented to Amun-Ra and Hapi. Every village must send part of its harvest as an offering." Murmurs rose from the crowd. There was no harvest. The fields were bone dry. An old farmer, Ptahhotep, stepped forward. "Sir," he said respectfully but firmly, "we have no harvest. Our storehouses barely contain grain from last year. Our children are hungry. How can we offer gifts?" The scribe clutched the papyrus tightly. His voice trembled, but he had to deliver the order. "The pharaoh's command is absolute. The gods are angry and will only be appeased with generous offerings. Every family must give from what they have." That night, Amenhotep's family gathered in their home. His mother, Merit, was baking bread from the last of the barley at the hearth. His sister, Nefret, only 10 years old, had grown thin from hunger. His little brother, Tutmos, sat quietly in the corner. "What will we do, father?" asked Amenhotep. Khaemwaset looked at the small statuette of Isis, goddess of corn, hanging on their wall. "There is only one thing we can do, my son. We will give wheat from our stores, so that the gods may help us." Merit turned from the hearth. Tears were in her eyes. "But Khaemwaset, that wheat is to get us through the winter. The children will go hungry." "If the Nile does not flood, there will be neither wheat nor children, my wife," said Khaemwaset painfully. "The pharaoh is trying to make peace between us and the gods. We must trust him." The temple of Karnak rose in the heart of Thebes. Giant columns stood majestic and magnificent, as if supporting the sky itself. Amenhotep walked to the temple with his father and other men from their village. They carried baskets, wheat, barley, a few precious jewels, treasures that families had kept for generations. When they entered the temple courtyard, their breath was taken away by the splendor. People had come from everywhere, farmers, merchants, craftsmen, all hoping for deliverance from the wrath of the gods. The priests, with shaven heads in white linen garments, moved with ceremonial solemnity. The high priest stood before the great statue of Amun. The statue was made of gold and gleamed in the sunlight. "O Amun-Ra, great God, Lord of the heavens," the high priest began. His voice echoed off the temple walls.
your servants beseech you. O sun god, why have you turned your wrath upon us? Why have you withheld the fertile waters of the Nile?" The crowd had knelt. Amenhotep bowed his head and prayed. In his heart was the image of his little sister writhing from hunger. The high priest continued ceremonially. "O Hapi, god of the sacred river, return your waters to us. Our lawns are drying, our children are hungry. We are in need of your bounty." The offerings were presented one by one. Golden cups, precious stones, sacks of grain, all placed before the gods. When Amenhotep saw the wheat from his own family's basket, his heart ached. This wheat was his sibling's life. At the end of the ceremony, the pharaoh himself appeared. Amenhotep III, with his golden crown and garments adorned with lapis lazuli, was like the earthly representative of the gods. His face was serious, almost worried. "O my people," said the pharaoh. His voice was strong but weary. "I, Amenhotep, lord of Upper and Lower Egypt, son of Amun-Ra, promise you, these offerings will appease the gods. The Nile will flood again. Your loyalty and sacrifice will not be forgotten." But in the pharaoh's eyes, Amenhotep noticed something: fear. Even the pharaoh himself, the exalted ruler revered as a god, was helpless before the winter of the Nile.
"Is water there?" Khaemwaset shook his head. "Son, these lands have belonged to our family for centuries. My grandfather was born here. My father was born here. I was born here. The gods will not forsake us." "But father, Nefret is dying. Thutmose grows weaker each day. Mother can no longer walk." Khaemwaset looked at his son's face. There were tears in the old farmer's eyes. "I know, son, I know. But what can I do? We pray to the gods, we offer sacrifices. What more can we do?" That night, a meeting was held in the village. Old Ptahhotep spoke. "Friends, our situation is dire. Our stores are empty. Our children are dying. We must make a decision." "What do you propose?" asked another farmer. "Some of us should go south. Perhaps conditions are better there. Those who remain will wait here for the Nile. If the river floods, we will call back those who left." The discussion lasted for hours. Some advocated leaving, some staying. Finally, half the village decided to go south to Nubya'ya. Amenhotep's family stayed. Khaemwaset could not even consider leaving his land. The change of seasons in Egypt was always precise and orderly. Achet, the flood season, Peret, the planting season, Shemu, the harvest season. But this year, the order of nature had been upended. Achet came and went, but the Nile did not flood. Amenhotep spent his days trying to fish by the river, but the water level had dropped so low that fish had become scarce too. One day he caught only 2 small fish, insufficient for a family of 6. On his way home, he saw a crowd in the village. People had gathered around something. As he approached, he saw a young woman lying on the ground, motionless. "What happened?" he asked. "Iabet," someone said. "She died of starvation." Amenhotep looked at the woman in shock. Iabet was their neighbor. She had 3 young children. Now those children were orphaned. That evening there was silence at home. Merit carefully divided the 2 fish. Each person's portion was a few bites. "Mother, why are the gods punishing us?" asked little Thutmose. His voice was weak, tired. Merit took her son into her lap. "I don't know, my dear. Perhaps we committed a sin. Perhaps the Pharaoh could not offer enough to the gods. Or perhaps this is part of the gods' grand plan. But I didn't do anything bad. Why am I being punished? Merit's tears fell onto her son's hair. Life is not always fair, my dear. Sometimes innocent people suffer. But we must be strong. We must not lose our faith. Amenhotep went outside. It was night, and the stars were shining. The goddess Nut, goddess of the sky, spread her star-studded body throughout the night. Everything seemed so normal. The stars, the moon, the cooling air. But on earth, everything was wrong.
He went to the river's edge. In the darkness, he heard the silent flow of the Nile. The river that was once mighty and vigorous was now like a small stream. "O Hapi," he whispered, "why have you forsaken us? What have we done? We prayed to you every year, offered sacrifices. Why don't you answer?" There was no answer but silence. In the palace at Thebes, Pharaoh Amenhotep III was in deep distress. Around his throne, viziers, priests, and advisors had gathered. Everyone looked worried. "Majesty," said the chief vizier, "the situation is getting worse. Reports from the villages are dire. People are dying of starvation. There may be uprisings in some regions." The pharaoh straightened on his throne. The golden crown weighed heavy on his head. "Uprising? Will my people rebel against me?" "Majesty," said the high priest in a calm voice, "hungry people cannot think rationally. Some are beginning to think that you are the cause of this disaster." "Me?" The pharaoh was angry. "I am the son of the gods. I am the protector of Egypt." "Majesty," said the high priest in a calm voice, "you know what is written in the ancient texts. The pharaoh is the guardian of Ma'at, of order, justice, balance. If Ma'at is broken, chaos comes. Some think Ma'at has been broken." The pharaoh stood up. He began to pace around the hall. "What more can I do? We have offered our most precious treasures as gifts. We have held ceremonies in the temples for days. The priests pray day and night. What more?" An old priest, Amenemhat, stepped forward. He was over 100 years old, and his long white beard reached to the ground. "Majesty," he said in a trembling but wise voice, "with your permission, let me tell you a story." "I'm listening," said the pharaoh. "Years ago, in my grandfather's time, there was a similar famine. The Nile did not flood. People died. Do you know what the pharaoh of that time, the great Senusret II, did?" "No," asked Amenhotep III. "Senusret left the palace. He went among his people. He visited villages. He spoke with farmers. He sat with fishermen. He saw their pain, felt their tears. And then he opened the royal storehouses. He distributed his own grain to the people. He fasted in his own palace." "And what happened?" asked the pharaoh. "The gods saw his mercy. They saw his sacrifice. And that year, though late, the Nile flooded." The hall was silent. Everyone was watching the pharaoh. Amenhotep III was lost in thought. Then he raised his head. "You are right, old friend. I have sat in my palace, but have not seen my people's pain. Tomorrow I will go to the villages of Thebes."
The next day, news spread that a great procession was coming to Amenhotep's village. People were astonished. The pharaoh? Coming here? The villagers gathered in the square. Everyone waited with curiosity and a little fear. Then a brilliant chariot appeared. It was drawn by 4 white horses. On the chariot, in gold and azure garments, stood the pharaoh. The chariot stopped. The pharaoh descended. The villagers immediately prostrated themselves. It was forbidden even to look at the pharaoh. He was like a god. "Rise," said the pharaoh. His voice was unexpectedly gentle. "Look at me. Do not be afraid." The people slowly stood. Amenhotep was seeing a pharaoh this close for the first time. Amenhotep III was about 40 years old. His face was thoughtful, his eyes weary. "I have come to you," said the pharaoh, "because I want to see my people's suffering. I sat in my palace, but remained distant from here. This was wrong." Old Ptahhotep stepped forward, trembling. "Majesty," he said, "you honor us." "No," said the pharaoh, "let the honor be mine. You are the backbone of Egypt. You feed us, and I have failed to protect you." Then the pharaoh did something that shocked everyone. He knelt down. He touched the parched earth. "This soil," he said, "is my responsibility. Every field, every inch of land. If this soil suffers, I suffer." Merit stepped forward from the crowd. "Majesty," she said courageously, "our children are hungry. Our neighbor Iabet died yesterday. Our stores are empty." The pharaoh stood up. He looked at Merit. "How many children do you have?" "3, Majesty." "What are their names?" "Amenhotep, Nefret, and Tutmos." The pharaoh smiled. "Your son bears my name. This is an honor. Vizier, take note. Grain from the royal stores will be sent to this village, enough for every family, and the same will be done for all the villages of Upper Egypt." A cry of joy rose from the people, but the pharaoh raised his hand. "However, this is only a temporary solution. The real problem is that the Nile is not flooding, and to solve this, we must all work together." The pharaoh stayed in the village for a day. He spoke with farmers, caressed children, listened to the elderly. In the evening, he ate at Khaemwaset's house, a simple meal, bread and some fish. "Khaemwaset," said the pharaoh, sitting at the table, "how many years have you farmed these lands?" 50 years, Majesty."
"Have you ever seen anything like this? A year when the Nile didn't flood this much?" Khaemwaset thought, "Once, Majesty, when I was a child, but then it only lasted a short time. A month later, the waters came." "And what did you do then?" "My grandfather made a special offering to the gods. He sacrificed a bull. It was our most valuable animal. And then all the men of the village dug a canal by the Nile's edge. When the waters came, thanks to that canal, more water reached our field." The pharaoh listened carefully to these words. "A canal? This is interesting. Perhaps praying to the gods alone is not enough. Perhaps we must also do something." The next day, as the pharaoh returned to Thebes, he began to formulate a plan. In his palace, he gathered the best engineers. "Is it possible to regulate the flow of the Nile?" he asked. The chief engineer, Senmut, looked thoughtful. "Majesty, the Nile is a very powerful river. We cannot completely control it, but perhaps with canals and dams we can use its waters more efficiently." "Explain," said the pharaoh. "Majesty, currently when the Nile floods, water spreads everywhere. but a large portion flows into the desert and is lost. If we build canals, we can direct the water to fields that need it. Also, we can build water reservoirs. During flood time, we can store excess water. The Pharaoh's eyes lit up. This will take time, but it must be done. Give the order. Canal systems will be built throughout Egypt. But the chief vizier intervened. Majesty, this is a huge project. It will require thousands of workers and money, much money. I have money. I will use the gold in the temples. The gods, I am certain, will be pleased with gold used for the welfare of the people. Months passed. By the Pharaoh's command, great construction began throughout Egypt. Thousands of workers were digging canals. Engineers were designing water reservoirs. Farmers were learning new irrigation techniques. Amenhotep volunteered to work on this project. Every day under the sun, he dug canals with his friends. It was hard work, but there was hope. Perhaps at the next flood, these canals would make a difference. One day, while working by the river, Amenhotep saw an old priest. The priest stood by the water, reciting prayers. "Father," said Amenhotep respectfully, "are you praying to the gods?" The priest turned. His eyes were aged but wise. "Yes, my son, to Hapi, god of the Nile. Do you think the gods hear us?" The priest smiled. "The gods always listen, my son. But sometimes their answer does not we expect. Sometimes the gods only inspire us, and we find our own solutions. These canals, are they the gods' inspiration?" "Perhaps," said the priest. "The Pharaoh came with a vision from the gods, and now the people are realizing that vision. Is this not a gift from the gods?" Amenhotep pondered these words. Perhaps the priest was right. Perhaps the gods were only showing them the way, but the walking was up to them. On his way home, he sensed a change in the village. People were still hungry, conditions were still difficult, but now there was hope. People working on the projects were receiving wages, grain from the Pharaoh's stores. The children were still thin, but they were no longer dying. Nefret had grown a bit stronger. Thutmose had begun to smile again. Merit still looked tired, but there was a light in her eyes. "Son," said Merit one evening, "have you heard? They say the Nile is rising a bit in the south, near Nubya." Amenhotep's heart quickened. "Really? There are reports from caravans. Perhaps the gods are finally answering." That night a celebration was held in the village. There was still little food, but people gathered. They sang songs, danced. For the first time in a long while, there was joy. Months later, finally, that day came. Amenhotep woke early in the morning. There was a different humidity in the air. He ran to the river's edge, and his breath caught at what he saw. The Nile was rising. The water level was visibly increasing. It wasn't yet a great flood, but it was a clear rise. "Father, mother, come! The Nile is rising!" All the village people rushed to the river's edge. People were crying out with joy, weeping, giving thanks to the gods. Khaemwaset touched the water. Tears were in his eyes. "Hapi has heard us. Finally, he has heard us." Within days, the Nile turned into a great flood. The water level rose rapidly, but this time the canals built by the Pharaoh's command were operational. Instead of spreading uncontrollably everywhere, the water was directed into carefully prepared channels. Amenhotep, with his father and other villagers, opened the gates at the mouths of the canals. The water, like blood flowing through veins, flowed into the fields. The parched earth seemed to swell with joy as it absorbed the water.
"Look, son," said Khaemwaset, dipping his hand in the water. "This is not just the gods' gift, but this is also the fruit of our labor. Without the canals, most of this water would have flowed into the desert, but now every drop is being utilized." Their fields were flooded, covered with fertile black mud. The Egyptians called this mud Kemet, black land, the source of Egypt's power and prosperity. The high priest came to the village for an official ceremony. By the river's edge, a thanksgiving sacrifice was offered to Hapi. A bull was ceremonially slaughtered. Its blood was poured into the river. "O Hapi, great river god," called the high priest, "you have shown your mercy. You have returned your bounty to us. We thank you forever." But at the end of the ceremony, the high priest added something more, something they had never heard before. "And O my people, remember, the gods not only gave us water, they also gave us reason and wisdom. Our Pharaoh, with the gods' inspiration, found the idea to build these canals. You, with labor, constructed these canals. This victory belongs to both the gods and you." The flood lasted several weeks. Then the waters began to slowly recede. Behind them, they left fields covered with fertile mud, perfect planting time. When Amenhotep shouldered the first sack of seeds, he felt deep gratitude within. 10 months ago, there was only cracked earth here. Now, a rich area full of life. His father showed him, "Look, son, this is how you'll plant. Don't bury the seed too deep, but don't leave it too shallow either. The soil must embrace its seed." Amenhotep advanced, planting seeds as his ancestors had done throughout history. Each seed was a hope. Each field was a future. In the neighboring field, young Iabet's husband Nakht was working. He had lost his wife, but continued to live for his 3 children. Amenhotep called out to him, "Nakht, how's it going?" Nakht raised his head. There was fatigue on his face, but also determination. "Good, Amenhotep. This harvest will be for Iabet, in her memory. Do you need help?" "No, thank you, but perhaps we can help each other at harvest time." This was the strength of Egyptian villages. People helped each other. When a neighbor fell, others lifted him up. When a family suffered hunger, others shared. Days turned into weeks. The fields became green. When the first sprouts emerged from the earth, another celebration was held in the village. Children ran joyfully through the fields. Women sang. Men imagined the coming harvest. Merit sat on the roof of their house, watching the sunset. Amenhotep came beside her. "Mother," he said, "are you happy?" Merit smiled. Her face still bore the marks of hunger, sunken cheeks, deep eye sockets, but there was life in her eyes. "Yes, son, very happy. The gods have given us another chance." "Do you think this will happen again? Will the Nile not flood again?" Merit thought. "I don't know, son. Life is not certain. But now we have our Pharaoh's canals. Now we are more prepared. And now our faith in the gods is even stronger." 4 months later, harvest time came. The fields were full of golden wheat heads. Barley gleamed in the sun. Cornstalks reached toward the sky. As Amenhotep cut wheat with his sickle, he felt deep satisfaction. Each head was the reward of labor. Each grain was life itself. In the village, a harvest festival began. Musicians played drums and flutes. Women wove crowns from the wheat heads.
children played in the fields. But one of the most important moments was the arrival of the pharaoh's representatives, tax collection time. Khaemwaset carefully set aside part of his harvest. This was his debt to the pharaoh. The royal stores fed the army, priests, officials, and palace workers. "Father," said Thutmose, now a bit more mature and stronger, "why are we giving our harvest? This is our labor." Khaemwaset drew his son to him. "Look, son, the pharaoh is not just a tax collector. He is the guardian of Egypt's order. He had the canals built. It was he who distributed grain from the stores. He who supports the priests, the army, everyone. We give, but he also gives to us." The tax official politely weighed and recorded the harvest. "Khaemwaset, you've had a good harvest. The gods have given you bounty." "Yes," said Khaemwaset, "and so has our pharaoh." That evening, a great feast was held in the village square. For the first time in a long while, there was plenty of food on the tables. Fresh bread, fish, vegetables, fruit, the gifts of the Nile. Amenhotep sat surrounded by his family. Nefret, now healthier and cheerful, was eating bread. Thutmose was laughing. Merit and Khaemwaset held each other's hands. "I want to make an announcement," said Khaemwaset. Everyone fell silent. "This year we returned from the brink of death. We saw hunger, disease, despair. But we also saw other things. We saw courage. We saw solidarity. We saw faith." His voice trembled. "We lost our neighbor, Ayabet. We lost other friends too. We will never forget them, but in their memory we will continue to live, stronger, wiser." People applauded. Someone began to sing, the song of the Nile, the song of bountiful harvest. Months later, Pharaoh Amenhotep III visited Thebes again, but this time it was for celebration. A great ceremony was held at the temple of Karnak. The pharaoh brought thanksgiving offerings to the gods, gold, silver, precious stones. But at the same time, he initiated the construction of a new temple. "This temple," the pharaoh said to the people, "will be dedicated not only to the gods, but also to the Nile and its bounty, because the Nile is Egypt's life vein."
But the pharaoh added something more. "And at the same time, the story of the past year will be written on the walls of this temple. The famine, the suffering, but also the courage and the solution. Future generations must know what hardships their ancestors endured and how they overcame them." Amenhotep was present at the ceremony with his father. The pharaoh saw them and called them over. "Is it you," the pharaoh asked, looking at Amenhotep, "the farmer's son who greeted me in the village that day?" "Yes, Majesty," said Amenhotep, bowing his head respectfully. "How are things? Was the harvest good?" "Very good, Majesty. Our field is bountiful. I can feed my family." The pharaoh smiled. "Good, because you and young people like you are Egypt's future. You will work these lands, maintain these canals, continue this legacy." Then the pharaoh turned to Khaemwaset. "And you, old friend, your wisdom is our most precious treasure. You teach your son well." "Majesty," said Khaemwaset, "I only pass on what my ancestors taught: respect for the land, gratitude to the Nile, faith in the gods." "And this," said the pharaoh, "is the spirit of Egypt." Years passed. Amenhotep grew up, married, and had children of his own. He inherited his father's farm and made it even more productive. One day, while working in the field with his son Ramos, the child asked, "Father,
Why does grandfather pray to the Nile every morning? Amenhotep stopped working and looked at his son. Because, son, the Nile is our life. Without it, we do not exist. But father, now we have canals. We don't have a water problem. Amenhotep smiled. The canals are the work of men, but the water is the gift of the gods. We need both, wisdom and labor, faith and work. Then he told his son a story about the year of famine, the hunger, the despair, and how everyone came together and found a solution. You didn't see that time, Ramos, but I did. I saw people die, but I also saw people's courage, and you must never forget this story. Why, father? Because life won't always be easy. Difficulties will come. But if we work together, trust in the gods, and also make efforts with our own hands, we can overcome any difficulty. That evening, 3 generations ate dinner together. Khaemwaset, now very old and frail, but still wise. Merit, her hair gray, but her eyes still lively. Amenhotep, now a mature man. And little Ramos, representing the future. "Grandfather," said Ramos, "will you tell me the story of the Nile?" Khaemwaset smiled. "Which story, son? The Nile has 1,001 stories." "All of them," said Ramos eagerly. And old Khaemwaset, under the stars, began to tell stories. Stories of ancient pharaohs, great floods, bountiful harvest years, difficult times, and prosperous times. "And remember, Ramos," he said finally, "we Egyptians are children of the Nile. It gives us life. We show it respect. This cycle has been so since the beginning of time and will be so until the end of time." At the temple of Karnak, a young priest named Nefer was studying the records of the famine year. His task was to write these events on papyri and preserve them for future generations. The high priest Ponhesi, who had succeeded Amenemhat, came beside Nefer. "How is it going, young priest?" he asked. "Father," said Nefer, "as I read these records, I wondered, was this famine just a natural disaster, or does it carry a deeper meaning?" Ponhesi sat beside the young priest. "What do you think?" "Perhaps," said Nefer cautiously, "the gods wanted to teach us a lesson. Perhaps we had taken the Nile's bounty for granted. We thought it would come every year and feed us. But the gods showed us that nothing is guaranteed." "An interesting thought. Continue." "And perhaps," said Nefer cautiously, "the gods expect not only our prayers, but also our actions. Our pharaoh had canals built. People worked together. Perhaps this was what the gods wanted." Ponhesi smiled. "A wise observation, young friend. It is written in the ancient texts, 'The gods help working hands.' We pray, but we must also act. But some people think that only offerings and prayers are sufficient." "And they are wrong," Ponhesi said decisively. "The gods are powerful, yes, but we are their hands and feet in the world. The pharaoh is the earthly representative of the god, but he too needs the support of his own people." Nefer continued writing on the papyrus. "Father, how should I write this story? Just the facts, or include the lessons too?" "Both," said Ponhesi. "Write the facts so people know what happened. Write the lessons so people learn what they must do." And thus Nefer wrote, "In the 15th year of Amenhotep III, the Nile did not flood. The people suffered, many died.
But the Pharaoh, with the god's inspiration, had great canals built, and the people, working together, overcame this crisis. This event teaches us, trust in the gods, but also work with your own hands. Trust in community, for one person is weak, but many are strong. And never lose hope, for even after the darkest night, dawn breaks.
Years later, Amenhotep had grown old. Ramoses was now managing the field, and Ramoses' son, young Amenhotep, named after his grandfather, was planting for the first time. The elderly Amenhotep sat by the riverbank, watching the sunset. The Nile flowed as always, eternal and unchanging. Ramoses came up to him. "Father, do you want to rest? Let me take you home."
"No, my son," said the elderly Amenhotep. "I want to stay here. I want to watch the Nile."
"Why, father?"
"Because the Nile is time itself, my son. Generations come and go. People are born, they die, but the Nile will always be here. It is the heart of Egypt."
Ramoses sat beside his father. "Father, what do you think the future will bring? Will there be more famines?"
Amenhotep thought for a moment. "Perhaps. Life is unpredictable. But now we are prepared. We have canals, we have knowledge, and most importantly, we have learned to stay united."
"But some young people," Ramoses said, "don't listen to the old stories anymore. They forget the past."
"Then," said Amenhotep, "you must remind them. Tell them my stories. Tell them to your children. Let them tell their own children, because those who forget the past cannot build the future."
The sun set. The sky turned from red to purple, and then to black. Stars began to appear. Goddess Nut had adorned the sky with them.
"Look, my son," said the elderly Amenhotep, pointing to the sky. "The stars are the souls of our ancestors. They are watching us. They see that their labor has not been in vain."
"And our duty," Ramoses said, "is to carry on their legacy."
"Yes," said Amenhotep, "and it is not just the land. It is our values, our wisdom, our community. Those are our true heritage." That night, Amenhotep dreamed of the god Hapi. The god of the Nile, fertile and powerful, smiled at him. "You have lived well, Amenhotep. You have served the land, fed your family, contributed to your community. Now rest. Your duty is complete." Amenhotep died peacefully the next morning, listening to the voice of the Nile, breathing in the scent of the earth, surrounded by his loved ones. 16th chapter. The End and also the Beginning. Amenhotep's funeral was held according to the traditions of ancient Egypt. His body was mummified, a simple process, for he was not wealthy, but still done with respect. Ramoses placed a modest gravestone at his burial site. On it, simple words were carved. "Here lies Amenhotep, son of Khaemwaset, a man who loved the land, respected the Nile, fed his family, and served his community. May the gods protect his soul." But Amenhotep's true legacy was not the stone. It was his son Ramoses, his grandson young Amenhotep, and the children they would have. It was the crops in the fields, the water carried by the canals, the solidarity of neighbors. The years passed. Generations changed. Pharaohs came and went. Amenhotep III replaced by his son Akhenaten, then Tutankhamun, then the dynasty of Ramses. Egypt changed, evolved, but the Nile kept flowing. Year after year, in a rhythm almost unchanging, it flooded. Sometimes more, sometimes less, but it always came. And with each flood, fertile silt spread over the land.
The descendants of Amenhotep's descendants still worked those fields. They still used the same canals. They still prayed to the Nile. And in their homes, on cold winter nights, children listened to their grandfather's stories. Once upon a time, the grandfather would say, long ago, the Nile did not flood. People went hungry. Many died. But the people came together. The pharaoh led. The priests prayed. The farmers worked. And together, they overcame that crisis. Is that true, grandfather? A child would ask. Yes, my child, very true. And what it teaches you is this. Life can be hard. Sometimes the gods remain silent. But if you believe, work hard, and act together, you can overcome any hardship. Could the Nile fail to flood again? Perhaps. But if it doesn't flood, we are prepared. We have our ancestors' wisdom. We have their canals. And most importantly, we have learned to stay united. And so the story was passed down from generation to generation, not just in words, but in actions. Every spring, seeds were sown. Every summer, plants grew. Every autumn, crops were harvested. Every winter, the future was planned. The cycle of the Nile was the cycle of life. Flood and retreat, abundance and scarcity, birth and death. But within this cycle, there was continuity, the perseverance of humankind, the strength of community, the union of faith and labor. Thousands of years later, archaeologists would dig these lands and uncover ancient papyri. They would read the records written by Nefer and marvel. These people, they would say, how were they so advanced? How could they be so well organized? And the answer was simple. Because they were the children of the Nile. The river gave them life, and they honored it. The gods inspired them, and they worked with their own hands. The community supported them, and they served the community in return. This was Egypt's secret. This was the source of the Nile's bounty. And this was the foundation of a civilization that lasted thousands of years. Once again, the sun rises over the Nile. The waters flow in their eternal rhythm. In the fields, a farmer plants seeds. A mother feeds her child. An elder tells stories. And the Nile, as always, gives life. Because the Nile is not just a river. It is Egypt's heart, soul, and future. And this story will never end. Because as long as the Nile flows, as long as people live, as long as stories are told, the legacy will continue forever.